In Bootstrap, we're able to do layout of a page in a pretty special way. It's using a grid system where you're going to think about the world living in 12 columns. So this represents 12 blocks across the page, and regardless of how wide the form is, it's going to still separate that into 12 even units. So when we lay things out on a page, we're going to use classes that represent a .col dash a size of screen we're looking for, and we'll talk about that more in a minute, and then the number of columns we want to take. So if we want two things side by side, they're going to be column 6 width and column 6 width, and it'll lay them out correctly. If we want 3, we're going to actually use column 4, and that 3 and 4 always confuses me because it always gets in my head. What do you mean 4 is in thirds? Of course, if you think about it as a 12-column system, of course 4 is in thirds. Math is our friend. If you want 4 even units, 3s, and then 6 even units in 2s. And so that we can start to think about building these in smarter ways. So if we have a column 9 and a column 3, we're going to get that sort of relationship between them on the page. We also have a column offset where we can say skip a couple of columns and then show it. So if we wanted to use 8 columns wide but have it centered in the middle, we use an offset of 2 and the column of 8. And if we can just mix and match these as well. So the offset doesn't need to be in the beginning of the column. It could be after another column declaration is shown. So here we can see the 3, and because it's offset 2, it's the 6 columns, offset 2 skipped columns, and then taking up the next 3. And if we directly after that have a set of columns that are 3 after that, Bootstrap knows well enough to not to paint it off the page, it wraps it, puts it on the next page. And so getting comfortable with this 12-column grid system will allow you to aesthetically build things and lay things out in a systematic way. So that if you're doing things like a grid of information, little cards of, let's say, movies on a movie website, what you're really doing is saying, oh, let's go ahead and make these 2-column wide, that we will get 6 across a page. And that 7th one will end up going in the first column, really on what you can think about as a second row. So you don't have to think about building one row at a time like you have done probably for years with things like tables. Becomes much easier to do these very simple and powerful layout mechanisms. Now in all these descriptions, I put little XXs in between the column and the number. And that's because we're really dealing with designing sites for different sized grids. And those grids have 4 different sizes for 4 different screen sizes. So for screens that are 1200 pixels or wider, which is sort of a modern laptop, the designation is LG. For anything over a small laptop or a large tablet, that's what's called the medium-sized grid. Then there's the small grid for smaller devices like large phones, phablets, and then you have smaller phones, everything that's smaller than 768. And what's important here is that you may decide on different widths, on different size grids for different screen sizes. So for example, we may say, well, here's some content that we want on a very small screen to be the full width of the page. And that's what we're putting in as grid 12. But on a medium-sized screen, go ahead and use 6. Now we don't have to designate all of them. Because we're saying greater than, we can actually do things like say col mid, and it'll work for mid-sized and large-sized, that same column number. And saying XS means that small and extra small will both get that 12 grid or that wide size. If you do need it special for all different sizes, you can include them. And so as you work with responsive layouts, with dealing with different sized devices, you're going to want to tweak these to see what they do. Let's see this in action to really sort of cement how the grid system works.